in Newtown, North Dakota. He's a Native American Studies instructor for the Noita Hidatsa Saanich College and a retired faculty member from the South Dakota State University. He is Mandan Hidatsa and Crow. It's our pleasure to have Valerian here with us. And Valerian, thank you for being on the line.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to start by saying Deshkatna, a greeting in our Inuit language to females. Our language is gender-based, but I wanted to say hello.
Thank you for that. And Valerian, being able to just even say those words, how important is it that when we talk about keeping our language alive, we use what we know, even if it's a small section of it?
Absolutely, to use as much as possible. We need to use it in our everyday life, whereas at one time it was spoken on the streets, in public places, and in our homes, and we don't hear that anymore.
And what do you think of that, Valerian?
Pardon?
What do you think about that we don't hear it as much as we used to?
It means it's a dying language, and we need a living language. Our cultural ways go when we lose our languages. So it's vital. It goes to our very identity as Indigenous people, as our tribal nations. We must have our tribal tongue to go with it. It goes to our worldview and how we understand things. The languages are very deep, very rich, and are meaningful. And the English language is somewhat limiting. We should be using our own language.
Sure. And anytime you hear it, I think it opens up a lot. Valerian, when you think of your community, how many fluent speakers would you say are left who are keeping the language going?
In regards to, we have three languages on our reservation here. We have the Inuit, the Mandan, we have the Hidatsa, and we have the Saanich. And they're all endangered. And we may have, I've heard on upwards of maybe 10 or 12 Arikara speakers or Saanich speakers. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 maybe Hidatsa speakers. And we have one fluent Inuit speaker left. And I guess one needs to determine what is fluent. We in our language preservation efforts, we don't all have standardized levels of fluency or competency levels, and those are some of the things we need to develop.
And, Valerian, it is very possible. One thing that I always enjoy hearing as we talk about generations past, especially in your part of the country where people were able to speak several native languages. And so the ability to pick up these languages, it's there. And Valerian, any thoughts on when we see that a language has, the number of speakers is starting to get smaller? What do you think? What kind of approach do we need to take? Do we have to be like firemen, run in there real quick and set out that fire, or does it take something else? What do you think?
The amount of speakers that we have, most of them are probably over the age of 60. And for many Native Americans, that's living on borrowed time. We don't have the same life expectancy as other Americans. And we need to preserve the language. It needs to be a top priority. And from the successful programs that I've researched, cultural submersion or immersion with young children, and to bring them maybe up through 6th grade and have a level of fluency where they can converse and describe things, etc., is something that we need to do. It's so difficult. Our tribal leaders should be leading the charge, funding and supporting our native languages. We can't rely on grants and rely on somebody else to save our language. It's up to us as individual tribal nations. And we can start with our own tribal nation as making that the official language of our tribal nation. After all, why are we using the colonizer's language? We need to be speaking our own and take pride in that. The colonizers were so successful in corrupting our minds to think that our native ways were less than, that we began to condemn each other. And that added to the boarding school era and our educational systems, which was in large part due to the loss of our languages because of that mentality. We need to empower ourselves to take it back because no one is going to do it for us. And our tribal elected officials need to take that in charge.
Sure. Valerian, I can only imagine, if we were to take that kind of approach, how our nations would change. What do you think about that, folks? Give us a ring, 1-800-996-2848. What about declaring your tribal language as the official language of your tribe? Would there be enough speakers to make sure that it keeps going? What happens when there aren't? 1-800-996-2848 is the number. Thanks for that, Valerian. We're going to say hello to our